Alright guys, I'm doing my review for Metroid Samus Returns on the Nintendo 3DS. So this actually got released in September, and it is exclusive to the 3DS family of systems. Works on all of them, so original generation 3DS, the XLs, 2DSs, new 3DSs, so on and so forth. Does work on all of them. It does have 3D, so if you are someone like me who actually like the 3D and the 3DS, it does have that feature. Metroid Samus Returns. It is a remake, or reimagining is a better word, of Metroid 2 Return of Samus, which was a Game Boy game back in the day. The reason this was made was because Nintendo, a lot of their Metroid games are pretty much up to date. Even the older ones like Super Metroid and stuff, they still are timeless. You go back, play them. They fit naturally. Metroid 2 was held back by the limitations of the Game Boy. It was good for back in the day on the Game Boy, but trying to play it nowadays, it's kind of hard. There's no map system. Not a whole lot of buttons to work with. The scope of the game isn't as big. Not a whole lot of power-ups compared to other games in the series. So it's a game that, story-wise, is a very important link in the Metroid timeline, very important part of the Metroid overall story arc. So, needless to say, Nintendo basically went back and did a revisit with it. Developed by Mercury Steam. They're the ones who did the Castlevania Lords of Shadows games. And I know they did Mirror of Fate on the 3DS. So they've worked with Metroidvanias before. Nintendo got them to do this, as well as some of the team from Nintendo's own internal teams. So they crafted this. Reimagining of Metroid 2. So basically, the overall scheme of it is, it takes place, technically, as far as story is concerned, it takes place after the events of Metroid 1, or Metroid Zero Mission. And the overall timeline of things, though, it does take place after the Metroid Prime games. So it would be Metroid 1/Zero Mission, then you would do Prime 1, Hunters 2, 3, then Federation Force, and then this game. So the actual gameplay, it's still the Metroid that you know and love, but really upped for, the current generation. So it still has the basic map from Metroid 2 is still there, but it's greatly expanded upon. So it's expanded upon. There's a lot of power-ups from other entries in the series that weren't there originally in the original game, but are here now, and they've revised a lot of areas of the game to basically work with that. You also have the map on the bottom screen. It does take great advantage of the 3DS's dual screens, because all the actions on the top screen, but the bottom screen is where you're going to have your map. You can view it at all times, and you can also switch between your different abilities. There are some other new stuff that hasn't been in the series before, like the Aeon abilities. You get 4 Aeon abilities. You unlock them as you progress through the game, and they're basically, you have a meter for an energy meter for them as well. So you kind of have to use them, sparingly. You can't really necessarily abuse them, but you can get energy from enemies when you beat them. But the Aeon abilities basically do things like help you see portions of the map, make you invincible for a time, slow down, things like that. So those basically what the Aeon abilities do. There's 4 of them in all, and like I said, you unlock them as you progress through the game. As far as the actual mechanics of the game, like I said, it's just Metroid like you love. You're going around in a 2D space, 2D side scroller. You unlock abilities as you go. When you first start the game, obviously you don't have a whole lot going. You have your basic blaster, and that's it. But like I said, as the game goes on, you can upgrade your shots. You get the missiles, eventually super missiles. You get the bombs. The ice beam. You get all that stuff just like you normally would. The bosses, Metroid 2 is known for having a much more laid-back style compared to the other Metroid games, where a lot of the Metroid games are known for having huge, crazy bosses, and it still kind of holds true even in this remake. There are some crazy bosses, especially at the end. Um, but it's still pretty much the goal of the game is hunting down the 40 different Metroids that are throughout the map. That's basically the goal of the game. So you don't have a whole lot of big bosses like Kraid and all that stuff. So there's not a whole lot of that. Like I said, more towards the end of the game. The game is pretty... The game, for the most part, is, I would say, pretty easy. But towards the end of the game, there are times where if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get your ass kicked. And it's mostly towards the end of the game. There is a difficulty spike, and I wasn't a big fan of the difficulty spike. So, yeah, there is a difficulty spike that's kind of unbalanced. But once you figure it out, you know, it's good. The game, they lengthened it a lot. The original Metro 2 can be beaten in like 3 or 4 hours. Probably even quicker than that if you speedrun it. This game can take you like twice that. You know, obviously shorter if you speedrun it. Me, I went for the 100%, and I put well over 15 hours into it. But that's also, I like to take my time with games, so for an average person who goes through their games, and if you wanted 100% this, find every power-up, every item, and everything, it'd probably take you around maybe 12 hours or so, I'm guessing. Maybe a little bit more than that, but yeah, you can beat the game if you just want to beat the game. You can beat the game in like probably 7+ hours. So it is lengthened a bit from the original, but it's still short and sweet, like a lot of the Metroid games are. So, yep. The music, the soundtrack is really... I like the soundtrack. A lot of people don't like it, but it is basically, obviously, an updated soundtrack of Metroid 2's. But they also brought back some other songs from the series that are really great. There are some new songs in there as well. So a lot of it is ambience. A lot of it is very ambient. But when there's music there, it's good. And the ambience is pretty good too. It really gives you the feeling of isolation that Metroid is known for. So the soundtrack, I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. I think it was really well done. There's a lot of memorable songs in here as well. The graphics, I think the graphics are great. A lot of people were hoping there would be 2D sprites like the other Metroid games, but this is a 3DS. It's capable of 3D graphics, capable of beautiful 3D graphics, and it does it well. The original Metroid 2 only had black backgrounds. These have very detailed backgrounds, especially when you turn the 3D on. You can see so far back, and it's beautiful. So basically, you're seeing a whole other side of the planet of SR388 that you never saw before in Metroid 2. So it's really great. They really, like I said, they really polished it up really well. The controls work well. You do have a 360-degree aim, which is also a first for the series. You no longer have to do just the forward, back, up, or diagonal. You can actually do complete 360. Takes a minute to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's like butter. You'll wonder how you ever got by without it before. There's also a new melee mechanic, so you can actually melee counter enemies. Again, it takes a little bit to get the timing down, but once you get it down, it's like butter. You wonder how you ever played another Metroid game without it, you know? So they've really, like I said, they've really re-upped the combat system for this game, and the controls are great. There are some things I wish were different. I wish you could button map some things with the controls. So the spider crawling, you have to hold the L button for the entire time you're doing it. If you're doing a massive amount of spider crawling, your hand tends to cramp a little bit. And I have the new 3DS XL, and I don't think I have big hands, but my hand was cramping after a while doing too much spider ball and, explore and everything. So there are a lot of, some of the controls I wish you could button map. So button mapping is a feature that, would work for this game that isn't there, unfortunately. So the controls, they work well, but they're not perfect as far as how the buttons are mapped. So just warning you guys now. As far as anything extra in the game, there's extra content. There's 2 difficulty modes. One's a hard mode that you can get for beating the game. The other is a fusion mode that you get by using the amiibo. So it does have amiibo support. The fusion mode is basically an even harder mode where you use the fusion suit for Metroid Fusion. There's other stuff as well. The amiibos can also unlock like a gallery and extra whatever things. And then as far as if you're expecting a whole other story mission like Zero Mission was, You're not necessarily going to get that with this game. But there is something special at the end. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but there is something special at the end that wasn't there before that really does cap off this game in a much better way than the original did. So it definitely, like I said, I think this was a much needed remake. This was the last Metroid game that really needed to be brought to the modern era. Like I said, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, all them, they're fine as they are. They're timeless. They age perfectly fine. They don't really need remakes. I would appreciate remakes in this vein, sure, but we don't need them. Metroid 2 needed this remake. It needed it, and it is a really brilliant remake. Like I said, it plays well, sounds well, looks well, feels well. The only things I can really say about it is there is a difficulty spike, and some of the button mapping is a little bit off. So that's about it. But like I said, they've expanded the game greatly. They really gave Metroid 2 justice, because like I said, it's an important link in the overall Metroid story arc, and to see it just presented in this era like this is really truly amazing. So definitely I'm gonna give Metroid Samus Returns a 9 out of 10. It's near perfect, and it's a couple fine tuned in some areas, like I said, the button mapping and such. But other than that, it's the remake we really definitely needed of Metroid 2. So yeah, and I will say this, I am glad this is on the 3DS. I know a lot of people wanted this on the Switch, but the dual screens really help with this game because of having some of the abilities as well as that map on the bottom screen. It really helps. Really helps. So the fact that this was on the 3DS is just, it's perfect. If it was on the Switch with only one screen, gotta be honest, that would have probably docked it down to an 8 for me, because of the fact that when you have that extra screen there, you're not having to constantly go through menus to look at a big sprawling map for a game like this. It's just so much easier. So Metroid Samus Returns, exclusively for 3DS, 9 out of 10. That's what I'm giving it. So hope you guys enjoyed. Hope this was very informative for you. Definitely, like I said, go and grab this game if you're a Metroid fan, if you're a fan of action shooters, sci-fi games, side-scrolling platformers, all those stuff. If you're a fan of Metroidvanias, obviously, go and get this game. Support this game, buy it, play it, love it, because I did. So, catch you guys later.